And welcome back to another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I am host Sean Meyers, joined by co-host Justin Lowery. Justin, WrestleMania 35 is in the books. We're going to talk about that. We're going to review our predictions, give maybe some of the highs and lows of the biggest spectacle of the year, and then talk about a pretty significant week to follow, Raw and Smackdown, which had become, in many people's eyes, the biggest Raw and Smackdown of the year. I think they maybe fell a little bit flat. But before we get into that, I want to focus on WrestleMania. I was there in attendance, and if you follow us on Twitter or Instagram, you saw some of that between that and NXT on Friday. So I have my perspective there in MetLife. I want to also get your perspective watching at home, because I think some things maybe translated better and some things not quite as well. Your grade for WrestleMania 35?
I'm going to give it a B.
Now, a B is not bad. Would you say that it maybe exceeded the expectations you had going in? Because I remember when I asked you last week, you were expecting maybe a C caliber show.
Yeah, I give it a B, which for me means it was good. It was pretty good. I'll go with pretty good. I enjoyed the matches for the most part. With so many, that it's hard to remember all 15, 16 of them. I'm going to give it like a B minus. Because the main event finish was a little screwy. I thought the Batista Triple H match lasted too long, which Triple H matches normally do. And there was one or two others that just seemed like Raw or SmackDown type matches, nothing special.
Right.
And, I mean, you could attest to this as being in attendance, but the Randy Orton AJ Styles match was really hurt because of a lighting issue, and it took away from the match because the crowd was more occupied, screaming that they were being blinded.
How often did it seem like the crowd was not into a match? Because being there personally, between what you said and some exhaustion later, I would say there was 4 or 5 matches where the fans weren't anywhere close to, I guess, at their best.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you could also tell, too, like, the highs and lows. Like, the show started off pretty good with a bang with the Universal title match. I don't think people were expecting that right off the bat. I even think by the time the main event rolled around, the crowd wasn't as into it.
I think they were into the entrances, and then the match itself was...
that match started about midnight.
Yes.
I mean, that is very late. And I would like to talk to a wrestler, and as a wrestler perspective, what's it like performing that late at night at midnight? I'm sure adrenaline's going, but how does that affect your body? That it's 4 hours later than you're normally used to wrestling.
Well, how about, Tony Nese and Buddy Murphy starting at 5:15?
Right, and in front of, were you seated for that?
Oh, yes, yeah.
How full was the stadium?
It wasn't bad. That being said, I mean, it was probably more than what a regular arena would be at that point. Right. Because you figure 80,000, there was at least, I would say, 30,000 there at that point, maybe more than that.
So it was about 50 to 60% full for their match?
Yeah, it wasn't sparse, and there was good reactions for the pre-show matches, even though they were kind of lame, But, so, what I felt was, some of the matches kind of came across as like, we're just going to have this match be very ordinary, bland, and not overshadow other matches. AJ Styles and Randy Orton, to me, was an example. Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns was an example. Matches that they didn't pull out all the stops because they realized this isn't one of our 3 or 4 biggest matches. I would rather have fewer matches, sort of go the takeover model, and have every match at least have the opportunity to try to steal the show. And I know Mania hasn't done that for a while, but guys like Randy Orton and AJ Styles are main eventers. So their match, that kind of epitomizes how WrestleMania could have been better, in my estimation.
Yeah, I mean... that match to me was a Raw SmackDown match. Apparently, though, AJ got hurt mid-match. I don't know if that affected, when he got hurt, if that affected anything. Clearly, the crowd participation, Orton always reacts to the crowd. I don't know if you ever noticed that. If the crowd turns on a match or is uninterested, he takes note, and he kind of like plays off to the crowd. I don't know if that's good or bad, if he should just ignore it. But in this case, he actually issued an apology after. I don't know, and I guess AJ did too, about the lighting and everything. So I kind of throw that match out the window. Angle and Corbin was a Raw. You could have done that on Raw. Yeah, even the women's tag team title match, people popped for the ending. but the
Right.
match itself was just so.
It's a matter of too many matches and too long of a show, right? 10 to
For
12 is probably your max, and you throw out, about 2 hours total, and I think you get a much better crowd and a much more reactive crowd.
Keep it at like 5 hours if that's your big, because a regular show is what, 3 to 4 hours, maybe 3.5 now. You know, if you want to go 5, go. There's no reason it should be ending at 12:30. It should still end at 11. 11:30.
You did make it through the whole night, though, right?
I did, and it was a struggle for me.
I could tell you the second the bell rang, Becky's music came on, there was a beeline towards the exits. And that's not, I understand some of the people wanted to beat traffic, so on, but it was like people almost felt thankful it's over.
Oh, I got to the point where I should be like invested in WrestleMania, enjoying the ride. I got to like 10:30, 11 o'clock, and I'm thinking, okay, wait, I still have this match to watch. Oh, man, please. I hope, like when Kurt Angle came out, I'm like, please keep this under 5 minutes. And like every match, I got to a point where please be like 7 or 8 minutes. Don't go 15. Like, I'm legitimately wanting the match to end. I don't even care what about the action. Just get me to the main event.
That's how I feel like, like extra inning baseball games now. It's just like I just want it to end. That's not a good thing. So I really honestly think this company will be better served to shorten this significantly, cut some matches, and the whole product will benefit from something like that.
Yes, and how many times did you get up from start to finish, from the pre-show?
Once.
Well, that's impressive.
I'm pretty hardcore with that stuff.
Hardcore.
Now, we were in a row with people who got up probably 5 times.
Okay, and for me, I'm home. I'm able to get up. And I can still go to the bathroom and see my TV. I can, grab a snack, grab a drink, and which I did. I made my own little night of it to keep myself interested. Like I drank some caffeine because, I
took the 5-hour energy before I went in.
Yeah, like it's too long. It's ridiculous, and clearly with all the issues they had afterwards with people being stranded. I guess the transit, shuts off at 1 a.m. Well, when you run a show to 12:30. That leaves a lot of people not enough time to get back to what they need to get to using public transportation.
So let's sort of go with the breakdown of the bigger matches, and we'll start with the main event, Becky Lynch, Ronda Rousey, and Charlotte Flair. A couple things to touch on here. First off, you mentioned the finish. Even if it was a botched finish where Ronda's shoulder was supposed to be down and it technically wasn't, regardless of how it played out, I don't like that being the finish. I wanted something more decisive. I get that they want to protect Ronda, and you're probably not going to have her tap out. But I think Becky Lynch, if you're having her win this, she needs to win it decisively. So, no, like, the reaction I had, and I think most of the people around was like, that's the end? That's the end of the match? Like, really? It didn't even feel like it was a super long match where they had already pulled out all the stops. I thought there was more left to go. I could have seen another 5 minutes to it. Now, I'm not saying I wanted 5 more minutes, but it felt very sudden, and I don't like WrestleMania ending on what was basically the equivalent of a roll-up.
Yeah, I'm sure you saw the different stories online. One story was that wasn't even supposed to be the finish. The finish was supposed to be Becky tapping Charlotte.
That would be great. Now we've seen her do that to Charlotte. I would have preferred her tapping Ronda, but I know they're not going to do that.
Right. Me, I would have been like, I don't like it if there's no payoff to a single match between Ronda and Becky. If there is a single match planned down the line, then I'm okay with it. But this role, then I heard that this was the planned finish, it just wasn't executed right. Which, it was weird. If that was the planned finish, why did Ronda get her shoulders up? It was just weird all around. There was a couple different theories out there. I'm not going to, talk about them because who knows if they're right or wrong. But apparently the ref got fined for botching the finish. I didn't even know they fined refs. But apparently they did fine him.
How do you not get this finish to the main event of WrestleMania right, though? How is not everyone on the same page and say, this is exactly how it's going to go?
Think, okay, if the ref knows this is the finish, he's told this is the finish, he's down, and he's counting 3. Now, my guess is he was looking down, probably didn't see his shoulders come up. Now, in that regard, what do you do if you're ref? Do you just act like you don't see it, go with the planned finish, or do you go, nope, 1, and then they got to pull out another finish on the fly?
Right. I think the refs are told if someone's shoulders are up or if someone's shoulders are down, count accordingly. It's up to the wrestlers to get it right.
Many times when they're supposed to kick out, the wrestler forgets or whatever happens, and they still come down to 3, and they call the match. I mean, I don't know what their protocol is, but she was up plain as day, and you probably didn't get to really see it live because you were there, but on TV, I mean, she was up like almost like a foot off the mat.
I just remember being stunned. That I literally said, "That's the finish," and I'm thinking, "Is Vince coming out? Like something's gonna happen?"
Because you immediately texted me and went, "What?" And I texted you right away, "Botch." Like whatever happened, something was botched, and it really sucks. And clearly, they're not going to mention it.
I remember Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar. Everyone knows what happened with that, the WrestleMania main event. But that's a little bit more understandable. That's a guy trying to do a move that's very difficult, and it didn't work out. And they still got the finish that they needed to, maybe not in the same way. This one, though, like, I'm sure it wasn't easy to try to do that counter, but they needed to have a more decisive finish. And before that, I thought the match was okay. I didn't think it was as good as what it should have and could have been.
No, I last week I said I was expecting big things from the girls, and I was a little underwhelmed. You know, but at midnight, it was going to take a lot for me to perk up. But they had high expectations. They had a tired crowd to deal with, and I just thought the match was okay. I thought, Charlotte's entrance was pretty awesome.
The weird thing about that is when I saw that, I was like, okay, cool. They're going to give them each special entrances, so on.
But Becky didn't get one.
And I was like, oh, well, is Charlotte going to win now because they did all this for her? And the other thing was, there was some sort of botch with the announcer. He was ready to introduce the competitors, and then they went to Joan Jett. So it seemed very mistimed, like we saw that from Charlotte. The whole thing, I honestly thought this women's match, it does deserve the main event, but they screwed up about 2 months of the build. The match itself wasn't as good, and the finish, which people are going to remember, I think, years from now, was bad. So ultimately, this shouldn't deter them from future women's main events, but I think if you're basing it just on this alone, it did not go nearly as well as what it should have been.
The only thing that went right out of it, the whole thing, is the right person has the belt right now. Like, that's the only thing
Agreed.
you can say.
And honestly, even that, I'd rather have her be one of the champions, but I guess having...
Yeah, I mean, we'll discuss Raw and Smackdown here in a little bit, and I'll get into her next title feud. But
the new Charlotte, as Becky called her.
Yeah, so all in all, I mean, good for them that they main evented, but it was a little underwhelming.
A match that I think lived up to expectations and absolutely captivated the fans was the SmackDown title, the WWE title match. Daniel Bryan defending against Kofi Kingston. As you can see, Kofi won that title. Justin, this was really something that 3 months ago was not a possibility. This is, for all the criticism you and I have given, and especially you to WWE, you have to give them credit. They did something that they probably never planned to do. They made the adjustment, and I think ultimately they did the right thing. Although you have to wonder, like, 6 months from now, Kofi might not be a big name, but you ride it while it's hot, you make your money, you get your viewers, you entertain the fans, and then you kind of can regroup down the road.
Yeah. If anything, I mean, do I expect his title reign to be long? No. Is he going to be a 2 or 3 time world champion? Probably not. But if anything, he got to have a moment, and it'll be the pinnacle of his career. This is probably the highest he's ever going to get. Like, he's living it right now. This is the peak of his career. It was the best match of the night, in my opinion. It was the match I was most invested in because I connected with Kofi and the drama. Even though I didn't like the build 100%, I still really wanted him to win. And I wasn't convinced, even though I picked him, that he was going to win. So I wasn't totally sure, and the match was awesome. I was waiting.
Were you surprised that he, unlike Becky Lynch, won so decisively, where he just like stomped Bryan and then hit him with it, and there was really not drama at the end, even though there was earlier in the match? That I thought they sort of got it backwards between the two main events.
I mean, a little bit, but I'm glad it went that way. I mean, because I was waiting for Rowan to do something to Bryan, or Bryan have somebody else come out. Like I was expecting, something different. Then there was rumors, which I don't know if you saw on Twitter during the show.
I tried to stay off of that for multiple reasons.
There was a rumor going around that Brock was going to come out and win the title off of Kofi right away because Vince was going to come out, say something. Brock was going to come out, then become the WWE champion.
Well, that sounds like the worst thing I've ever heard.
Well, right. And I was like, no, they won't do this. I'm like, well, no, Vince might do this. But this would be insane if they would pull this off. And thankfully, I don't know who started it, but it was hearsay. Great match, great outcome. And apparently Daniel Bryan got hurt during the match, and that's why he wasn't on SmackDown.
Were you, I know you were a little disappointed at the time when the match took place as far as where it ranked on the card. I thought it was a good decision because it was early enough that everyone was still in it.
In the end, I think the crowd was mostly into that match. Like, if you look at one match, I think the crowd was best in that match because I think, what did it go on, around 9:45 maybe? Maybe like 9:30?
I want to say slightly before 9:30.
Yeah, so that's a perfect. The crowd was, into it, invested, and honestly, after that was probably peak emotion. After that, whatever follows after that, the matches aren't as important until the women's match. They're really not.
And I think the crowd reacted accordingly to that.
And you have it, yeah.
So you mentioned already kicking off the show, Lesnar Rollins. Here's the good. You have a new champion that's going to be on Raw every week in Seth Rollins. Brock Lesnar's probably gone for the time being. I don't want to say he's gone for good because I think he will come back. And I'm fine with him wrestling on a part-time basis as long as he's not a champion, as long as he's not, squashing guys that need to be on the rise. But he has his role, and he plays a pretty basic role, Justin. He wrestles brief matches, he dominates, and then either he hangs on to win at the end or he loses. In this case, he lost. Seth Rollins, for over a year, has gotten over as the number one face on Raw because of his great in-ring work. In this match, I think he did 2 moves, a low blow and 3 stomps. So it wasn't showing what Seth Rollins is capable of. It was, a pretty formulaic Brock match. It wasn't half as good as Brock and Daniel Bryan, wasn't as good as Brock and Finn Balor, but it set, the tone for the night. Hey, we're going to have the right people win. And it was, I think, the ending that people wanted. And usually if you have the right ending, what precedes it isn't quite as important.
Yeah, that was a Brock is leaving for a while match. He's going to go back to the UFC and fight. I'm going to come out here, do what I have to do, and I'm getting the hell out. Like, that's pretty much what it was. And maybe he didn't take too many bumps because, supposedly he's going to fight in August. Maybe there was an agreement like, look, I can't get hurt. I'm going to do the least amount as possible. This is the layout of the match. People got what they wanted, so they're not going to really complain, like you said.
And by the way, Paul Heyman's promo basically stating, hey, we're not main eventing, so we don't want to wait around. I thought that was pretty good.
Well, did you see that Hulk Hogan was legitimately confused because that wasn't supposed to be the opening, and no one told him? They, I guess, decided to switch it like 20 minutes before showtime.
As far as Heyman coming out.
Yeah, when Heyman came out, Hulk Hogan was legitimately like, what the F is happening?
Did he know where he was, though?
What, Hogan?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the super, yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, he made that joke, but then he called it like the MetLife Arena or something, and it wasn't, he actually called MetLife the wrong name anyway.
I don't even want to see Hogan on my TV. Get him the hell out.
Well, you got to see Alexa Bliss with him at least, so that makes it a little bit more, Batista Triple H, I did not expect the type of match that turned out to be. It was pretty brutal. Now, you watching at home probably could see a little better because while we had good seats and we were able to see a lot of the action, specific things like the, pulling out the nose ring, we had to kind of look at the screen for that. But from what I'm to understand, that was a crazy physical and brutal match. And I kind of am not happy that the crowd was quiet for it, didn't really react, because I thought these guys, yeah, I know they're older. They're probably not, massive favorites with the hardcore wrestling fans, but these guys gave it their all, and I thought for what it was, this was a really good match. And apparently it's the last match for Batista. He wrote a really cool message afterwards, and, he seems like a pretty nice guy, the way that it came across. Like, it wasn't character heel Batista. It was the real person. If that's his send-off, man, he left it out there. They put on a brutal match.
Yeah, well, this is why the crowd... One, it was later in the night. The crowd was getting tired. And two, like we talked about, the build for it, why was this match really happening? Like, I still didn't get like 100% feel of why it was happening. So, one, people weren't, too invested, and two, that they were getting tired. I think that's why the crowd reaction, was what it was. I think that's the reasoning behind it.
How did you evaluate the match?
I thought it went a little too long. Matches like that, if you want to go brutal, fine with that. But a brutal match shouldn't go like 20 minutes.
What was your reaction to the nose ring?
I thought it was, kind of cool, like different. I mean, I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, that was very not PG. That was more violent. Like on TV, you didn't really get to see anything. I mean, it was just the thought. It was the image in your mind of someone ripping out somebody's nose
right.
ring. So that I liked it. I thought it was cool, different.
Now that's a match that length would have been okay if the card itself was an hour and a half shorter, right?
Oh, right. If you knock off time and you want to give that 20 minutes, that's great. But when you still have like 4 or 5 matches after that, and it's 10:30 or whatever,
right?
You got to pick or choose what you're really going to get up for.
So we've talked about 4 big matches, and we'll run down our predictions and how we did momentarily. But something that was, I think, pretty anticipated was Elias's role, not because of his performance, which was unique in its own right, but speculation of who would interrupt him. And there was all the big names circulating. And I talked to someone else that hosts a podcast on Saturday night, and he said, it's going to be The Undertaker. It's going to be The Undertaker. John Cena is definitely replacing Rey Mysterio. So there was rumors running rampant about everyone's role. I kind of always thought it was going to be Cena. Turns out I was correct. But it was a little twist on Cena because they had an interaction last year at Mania, so they got to spice it up. John Cena goes throwback, which truthfully was absolutely my favorite version of John Cena. I absolutely loved him back in, what was it, like 2003, 2004. And he did the throwback. Now, some of the stuff was a little confusing with like the minute-long Babe Ruth where everyone's like, I don't understand what's happening. But ultimately, it was cool. I would have liked to have at least seen like maybe a 5-minute match resulting from it. Nonetheless, nice surprise. I think people realized Cena was going to be there in some role. But I think that was probably like the surprise of the night other than Hulk Hogan flexing, which really accomplished nothing.
Right, actually, I was pretty pumped for it. That was, again, my favorite version of Cena, and that's where everybody loved Cena, where Cena was edgy and cool before they turned him into more like a superhero kid figure type. It was funny. I mean, he cracked some good jokes. It was a good time. It was something that wasn't a match, but it gave everybody a chance to, cheer, and it was legit surprising. Like, we had not seen that character in a long, long
right.
time. And
I think he maybe tried at one time with The Rock when they were doing that feud.
But he wasn't like in full character. He might have cut a promo like that, but he was still wearing the green Cena shirt. Like, he
right.
came out dressed like the thugonomic character. And I'm glad he was smart enough to keep the hat on, because that haircut is definitely not thuggish.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at the predictions, how we did. And we were on the same page for a lot of them, and unfortunately some of those that we agreed upon we were wrong. But as you can see, Justin Lowery, by 1 prediction, wins once again. And it really came down to Triple H over Batista and Tony Nese over Buddy Murphy. So Justin, congratulations on that. When you look at that, we were both above 500, but I think that it was better than last year where they like went out of their way to fool people. But I thought they gave enough surprises and kept people on their toes. Like the Miz losing to Shane, that one I did not see coming at all. And the Iconics winning from Sasha and Bayley, that one shocked me a decent amount as well.
Yeah, just because I like them as a tag team. I think they serve their purpose well. They're not the greatest wrestlers, but they're great characters, They're actually probably the only true tag team. I mean, they've been together for years. I thought it was a cool moment. Randy Orton losing was a bit of a surprise for me. I really thought he would win, but okay. And the Usos, I think when we talked, I said it was 50-50.
Right, I agree. I was 50-50 thinking Black and Ricochet had just as good of a chance.
Especially, I was a little surprised by that, but then again, the Usos, they win, but then they go to SmackDown and then they drop the belts right away. So it's like, well, what was the point of that?
But the big thing is we got the 3 biggest matches correct, and I think the company got those correct as well.
Yeah, and I'm guessing we're just going to see the Miz and Shane keep on feuding. That's why Shane won.
So it was a big weekend, and involved in that was NXT Takeover and the Hall of Fame. Now, I was at NXT Takeover, and Justin, 5 matches. It went over 3 hours for 5 matches, which is insane. But I think they did it right. And maybe you could cut 10, 15 minutes total off of that. But other than that, I think it was pretty well timed, and the matches delivered. The main event, Johnny Gargano winning the title, defeating Adam Cole, was legitimately 40 minutes of back and forth. One of the better matches I have seen, even though it's certainly an NXT or indie style match, the way it played out. That's not a WWE style match. And there's pretty significant differences in how the companies approach their wrestling. But it seemed like, as always, TakeOver was a real highlight to the weekend.
Yes. Like I think I texted this to you. TakeOver events are my favorite thing in wrestling. Anything that the main roster does, anything that New Japan does, anything that R&H does, Impact, any other indie thing. I look forward to TakeOver so much because it's the best formula out there. You get 4 or 5 matches. They're all going to get ample time. There's going to be great action, great storytelling, great psychology. Just love it. This TakeOver was awesome. I enjoyed every single match. And I looked at like 4 or 5 different people's reviews. I think the lowest rating match was like a 3 or 3.5 stars. And that was the women's match. Everything else was like 4, 4.5. Couple 5-star matches for the main event, depending on your taste.
So the Adam Cole baby that the crowd did when he came out, I'm not joking. I think that was the loudest reaction I've ever heard, watching wrestling.
Even on takeovers, when they do that, it pipes through the TV. Like
that entire arena went with that. It wasn't like 80%. It was like 99%.
Yeah, it's awesome, and I'm an Adam Cole fan since his Ring of Honor days. The main event was awesome. I enjoyed every second of it. It started off slow, and then once they went to the third fall, it just took the hell off. It was amazing.
Hall of Fame was the next night. It's really lost its luster in recent years just because they don't have a lot of headliners, and this is a show that typically runs too long. Now I think they did shorten up quite a bit, which was refreshing, but it's a long night. The headliners were DX, but it's sort of weird because it's a group, and, Triple H is going to get in there eventually. Shawn Michaels is already in, so it's whatever. And there's a lot of guys who are entering for the second time. Shawn Michaels, Booker T, and Bret Hart. And Bret Hart really was at the center of the tension, and not as far as what the plan was. It was off script. He was legitimately attacked by a fan. You texted me this while watching. I was not at the Hall of Fame, but it seemed like this made major headlines. He's okay. He was at WrestleMania the next night, and I think they kind of included him with Natty's entrance just to show everyone, like, hey, he's okay. Let's give it up for him. Your thoughts on the Hall of Fame, and in particular that incident?
The Hall of Fame in general, I thought it was decent. I was a little confused why some guys had people induct them, some others didn't. They just went straight out. I don't know how they decided who got it.
Yeah, I watched the hour condensed version after Raw, and I thought the same thing. Like, why are Graves and Renee introducing DX, but Jimmy Hart's,
Right, either everybody gets one or nobody gets one. But
in past years, they always had someone inducting everyone, right?
And I know they were trying to cut back on time, which is good. So just don't do it. Or the inductors, they get like 4 or 5 minutes. Some of those inductors would talk for 10, 15 minutes. It's like, shut up. We're not here to see you. We're here to see them. But a highlight for me was actually Tori Wilson's speech. I don't know if they showed that on the one after Raw on the hour special.
Yeah, they did. They actually had both Stacy give the intro and then Tori. Okay. And I know Tori's big line was, puberty, so on and so forth. That apparently everyone popped for.
Well, I think me and you can both agree to that too. But it was great to see Stacy. That was a surprise.
What did Big E and Woods do to react? Because I saw them constantly doing something ridiculous.
Those guys. I don't know who did it, but they're a genius. They put them right behind the camera, and they knew they were on camera the whole time. Those guys were priceless all night long. When the Honky Tonk Man came out, Big E's just like stringing it and playing it. Those guys are treasures. They really are. DX went on a little too long. I thought the comedy was a little, okay, they were trying too hard. X-Pac came off very legit, choking up. I really enjoyed trying to listen to him talk, even though he kept stumbling, but you could tell it really meant something to him. I enjoyed the little shots with Billy Gunn, with All Elite Wrestling, the little subtle, Shawn Michaels saying, "Hey, Billy, are you all in?" and this and that. I don't know if you saw any of that.
Yeah, they didn't have that. They mentioned that they kept saying Vince's name and so on, but they showed the water gun joke.
Like Billy Gunn said something like, "Hey, I can do whatever I want. Vince can't fire me." And the crowd went, "Oh!" And Triple H got on the mic and said, "Vince McMahon can buy that pissant company whenever the hell he wants." And stupid stuff like that. But it was good, somewhat enjoyable. The Bret Hart situation, I was watching it live. All of a sudden, you just see some guy fly out in the ring, hit Bret Hart, and then the screen went black for like 15 seconds. And I immediately knew what happened. I'm like, uh-oh, somebody jumped the ring and attacked Bret Hart. And I'm like, hopefully everything's okay. So when it finally comes back, it's just people everywhere. There's people in the ring, people are outside the ring, everybody's standing up. The guy's getting the crap kicked out of them. Outside
by the Revival, right?
But Revival got in a couple shots. Ronda Rousey's husband apparently got in some shots. Teddy Hart, who was there to watch his uncle get abducted, jumped in, was beating the hell out of the guy too. Rightfully so. I have no problem with them beating the hell out of the guy. The guy's an idiot. Then you get back, the crowd was cheering. It kind of sucked. You can see Bret was a little taken aback. He gathered himself, finished his speech.
And they did not show that on the condensed version after Raw, and I think that was the reason.
Well, I wonder if it's going to be... I bet you it's cut, too, from the network right now.
Probably.
Bet you when you go to watch it, you're never going to see any of that. I bet you it's cut.
Right. Well, it's on the internet, so it'll live forever to some regard. All right, so I want to kind of go rapid fire through the Raw and SmackDown afterwards. I was a little disappointed there wasn't maybe the same buzz that there typically is. There wasn't the same amount of debuts, and I think a lot of that stems from what they did the last 3 or 4 months when they had some other guys debut. But your quick takeaways from Raw and SmackDown this week.
Raw, I was completely underwhelmed. Usually Raw after WrestleMania is one of the biggest shows of the year.
Well, they teased like it was going to be a massive main event, and they got people to stick around, and then they swerved us.
You know what? I don't blame the crowd for turning on the match, and I hope Vince doesn't go, "Look, see, no one wants Kofi as champion." Like, no, that was a crowd being pissed off. You promised them a winner-take-all match. Okay, so if you're not going to have an outcome, if there's going to be a little swerve, it better be a shocking swerve, somebody new from NXT. Or
everyone wanted the Undisputed Era.
Right, a big surprise, something that makes the crowd go, "Oh, okay," not randomly Sheamus and Cesaro.
I told my roommate that the bar has become like the 2019 version of Kane, where they always use Kane to be like a surprise opponent or ruin something.
Like, what was the point of them being? They're not even on Raw. They attack what for? And then Seth Rollins like, "Let's team up and take these guys on." The crowd then lost it. That was it. CM Punk, AEW bullshit. I mean, the things that people have a problem with WWE in, that was it right there. Boom. This horrible decision making. And when it came to SmackDown, why is Drew McIntyre on there? Why is Strowman on there? It's not like that should be next week.
I agree. It's just insane to me.
And to what you said about the surprises. Yes, they called up some guys earlier, and I think too next week being the shakeup, they weren't going to give you any of those because you're going to get those next week with whatever NXT people might come up. You're going to get that next week.
And Paige already teased a tag team. Is that going to be Kari and Io Shirai?
That's my guess. I mean, who else would it be coming from up there? That would be my pick, right? And then that, I guess, makes sense if Paige is going to be their manager.
They need a mouthpiece.
So I guess that makes sense. Sense.
Lars Sullivan debuts. I was, I probably preferred it on Raw over SmackDown. That being said, if he takes out Kurt Angle when Kurt Angle's saying goodbye, have Angle beat Corbin the night before at least, because he's still putting someone over the next night. Yeah, and Lars makes more sense if they want to build him. Yeah, Sami Zayn returns. I loved what I heard from him.
Oh, that promo afterwards was awesome. That was awesome. I enjoyed that. Heel with Sami. He's a really good heel.
And I think that the biggest ones, Lacey Evans, Becky Lynch, we'll see how that plays out. It seems really premature for Lacey Evans to be involved in that. Hardys win the tag team championships. That basically just opens the doors for the Usos to move to Raw. And then long term, it might not mean a whole lot, but the big surprise on Raw was The Undertaker interrupting Elias. I know you said that this really didn't mean much to you, and I get the perspective of 3 weeks from now, it's probably not going to mean anything. That being said, The Undertaker really picks his spots, unless it's Saudi Arabia. He's very rarely seen. So that seems like it should mean good things for Elias if they put him in that spot. Cena one night, Taker the other. It's hard to top that.
Yeah, me and you went back and forth a little bit on it. We have, I think, different perspectives. You know, you come in with more of a personal perspective. Me, I'm just coming as a fan. Like this, I'm strictly looking at it as a wrestling fan. It seems every time Elias he does get TV time every week, which is good. He gets spotlighted. That's great. But he never really wrestles. He doesn't have a really strong feud under his belt. And he never comes out on top. I know he's a heel, and he's not really supposed to. But being made to look a fool by Cena and Taker while you're in the ring with legends, and that can't hurt you, but they're making you look like a fool. So how, as a casual fan, should I take you seriously? That's my worry with him.
Well, what it should do is springboard him. Next week, he starts a feud with an active competitor, and he beats the crap out of the guy and says, I'm done being treated as a joke. I'm done being interrupted. Everyone takes advantage of me.
That's what's going to happen, though?
It could, and I don't know that it will, but something like that could springboard it, because if you are a casual fan and you watched Mania and you watched the night after on Raw, you're excited to see Cena and you're excited to see the Taker, and you recognize who's in the ring with them. All of a sudden, you know who Elias is because of that.
Well, and I mean, Elias gets reactions. When he does his skit, people go along with it. They're into it, but for whatever reason, they're not giving him anything really meaty to sink his teeth into.
So overall, let's put a bow on this one. NXT Hall of Fame, WrestleMania, Raw, and SmackDown. Was it slightly disappointing? Did it exceed expectations, or was it right where you thought it would be?
NXT A+. I don't know how they do it, but every time, it just, I don't know if it gets better, but it stays right on the A level. They keep it going. WrestleMania, a little better than I anticipated. Some sloppiness. Not everything was great.
Would you say middle of the pack all time WrestleMania?
Oh yeah, not in the bottom third, but not in the top 30 either.
I would probably agree with that.
Yeah.
Although I will say, again, we're going to remember the big outcomes, and I think that they showed that they are going to listen to the fans more than they have in years past. Whether or not that leads to long term, we'll see. But I think it was a clear change in that regard.
If AEW starts out strong, and it seems like they do have a major TV deal in the works, came out TBS, TNT, then they will listen to the fans, because they'll have no choice, because they're not going to be the only game in town. But to move on, Hall of Fame, I'll give a C+ to. Raw, C. SmackDown, B.
Overall, I would say that's probably about a B total. So
yeah, probably around an 80%. Yeah, I guess averaging out low B.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think being at WrestleMania was like really an incredible moment. Regardless of how the show turned out, just being there is something special. And I could tell you, people legit came from all over the world. So it's a special group. Takeover. That's the first time I attended one of those. That was terrific. And watching Raw and SmackDown, I was a little disappointed, but I think, to your point, next week might be pretty big as well. So you can't do everything big at once or it gets lost in the shuffle. Nonetheless, company can certainly do better, but I think there were some positive strides made over the past week. That's going to do it for this week's edition. Once again, you can follow us on Twitter, 5-Star Pod Wrestle. Check out our Instagram page and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we have a new show each and every week. For Justin Lowery, this is Sean Meyers signing off. Once again, thank you for watching the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.